Hey everybody, we're going to learn about these things today. This is a Capo chewed up from my dog. I had the rubber piece. I ordered some of these on eBay and I replaced it. But normally these things last forever. Um, there's different types. They're Kaisers. This is I think a Dunlop. Just kind of clamps on. And there's some more streamlined ones. You don't have to pay a ton, but you should always have a capo, and today we'll show you what we use a capo for. Probably the least used purpose for a capo is to improve the action. So sometimes, especially if you're playing on an old guitar or a cheap guitar that is the action is very high. Maybe the neck has kind of pulled up, so those strings get further and further away from the fretboard. So any chord that you're playing beyond the first or second fret, you really have to press hard, and it just becomes difficult to play. So by putting a capo on, that will it will lower the strings, so it's a little easier to play. If this nut, this white piece here, if that is a little bit high, sometimes a capo helps. But that is, I want to say, that's the sort of the least used purpose for a capo. Most of the time, a capo is designed to kind of change the key of the song, and for a couple reasons. If the singer has a certain range that they prefer, maybe there's a song that you learned in in G, but it's too low for them, and you need to capo up to get into that sweet spot. That's one reason for it. And even for yourself, if you're just playing solo and you go through a song and you find the highest note and the lowest note, maybe the highest note is too high for you, or the lowest note is too low for you. You kind of want to shift the key of the song so that high note you can reach. So you would lower the key, or if there is a note that is just too low, you want to raise the key. Of course, the lowest to the highest note in a song can be challenging depending on your range. But most songs, you can find a comfortable spot, and it's not always where the sheet music is, or where the chord sheet kind of falls, or where the key of the song, the way it was recorded, might not be comfortable for you. So how do we change it, and where do we put the capo? The other reason we want to use a capo is maybe we want to play chord shapes that are easy for us. I'll put a chart up here on the screen, and what this is, if you take a look at it, this shows every key, all 12 keys, and it shows the chords that are in that key. And you really only need to be interested in the first six, chord 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And you see that the major chord is going to be an uppercase I, on that black line, and then the lowercase are going to be minors. So in the case of a C, a song that's in the key of C, generally the chords that are going to be used are going to be the C, the D minor, the E minor, the F, the G, and the A minor. And a C, if you look at those chords in the key of C, they're pretty easy to play. There's no bar chords in there. That might be the most comfortable key, especially for a beginner to play. The other key to look at is the key of G. And when you look across those chords, pretty much the same thing. You have a G, an A minor, you have a B minor, but a B minor you don't necessarily have to bar. You can kind of just put, 3 or 4 fingers on the first 3 or 4 strings and get away with a B minor. Then you have a C and a D and an E minor. All chords well within the realm of a beginner to an intermediate player. So let's target playing a song with the C chord shapes or the G chord shapes. Okay, how do we know what key a song is in? Well, by using that chart, when you look at a chord sheet for a song, most of the time, kind of that beginning chord is the key of the song, or at the end of the chorus, the chord that the chorus kind of resolves on many times is the key of the song. But the other, but not always. So the other thing you can do is kind of look at the chords that are in a song. Look at a chord sheet, a lyric and chord sheet, and look at the chords that are in there. And normally that collection of chords will sort of be on one of those lines. Oftentimes, again, the chord that starts the song is kind of the key of the song, but not always. So it's pretty easy, to figure that out. But for example, if the song begins with a C chord, and you'll see all those chords in that, or not necessarily all of them, but you'll see those chords in the song. So how do we know? Say there's a song that is in a key that has some strange chords in it. Not strange, but more difficult chords to play, like a song in the key of F. So if we look at the key of F and the chords that are in that group, there's an F, a G minor, A minor, B flat, C, and D minor. So there's an F chord, which again you can kind of play with four fingers, but then there's that G minor, which it's a bar chord, okay? And then there's a B flat, another bar chord, kind of difficult. So let's try to get this. Let's do this. Let's try to get this F song, okay? Because the piano player, he's not going to transpose his piano. He's going to play, in that key. The bass player is going to play in the key of F. And maybe an accompanying guitar player is maybe a little more experienced, and he's fine with playing the chords in the key of F. But you want to, for a couple reasons, you may want to just transpose that to the key of C because they're easier chords to play for you, or G because they are also easy to play. But the other reason you may want to play different chord shapes and remain in the key of F is if one guitar player is playing chords in the key of F and you're playing chord shapes further up the neck or in a different position, it'll add a lot more interest to the sound, the overall sound. Because if he's playing an F down there and you're playing an F further up like there, even though they're the same chord, it'll add some interest to it. So how do we know what fret to put the capo on? Well, this is the secret. You should know the notes on your low E and your A string. So you have, of course, that's an E. So know all the natural notes, if not all the notes. So you have E, F, G, A, B, C, D, and E again. All right. And if you want to know the flats or the sharps, as long as you know the natural notes, you can figure out the sharps or flats. Same thing on the A. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and A. So learn those notes on those two strings, okay? If you know them, then you'll know that the G is on the E string 3rd fret and the C is on the A string 3rd fret, okay? And this is the beginning of the process of where do I put the capo, okay? So you have a choice. I like the chords in the C family or the G family. Let's start with the C family, okay? So that's a C note, but the song begins in F, okay? The song is in the key of F. The other guitar player is playing an F. The bass player is playing an F. But you want to play a C chord that sounds like an F. So let's just start with the C and count up until we get to the F note and count how many frets that is. And that's going to tell us what fret we put the capo on. So here's a C. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, there's an F note, and we counted 5 notes up, so we put the capo on the 5th fret. And we can play a C, and that is an F. All right, and you hear those two different sounds, same chord, but kind of a rich bassy sound that maybe the other guitar player is playing, but we're capoed on the 5th, playing a C. A lot of little hammer-on things you can do with the C. That's why, we like those C family of chords. Okay, what about a G? We like the G chord family. So we have a G. All right, we have to count up till we get to an F. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's an F. All right, 10. We're going to put the capo on the 10th fret? I don't think so. But we really love those G shapes, so we're going to play a G. Okay? It could work, depending on the chords, but that is way up on the, fretboard. So, once you get to the, 10th fret, 11th fret, it's a little difficult to play those chord shapes, but it may work. But that's the process. So start on the note of the chords that you want to play, that family, either the C family or the G family, okay? And then count up how many notes until you get to the key that the song is in. And that's the fret number that you put the capo on. So let's look at a chord progression here. A real common chord progression I'll put on the screen. The 1, 5, 6, 4. So what does that sound like? And there's a lot of songs with this progression. Okay. But say the sheet music and the piano player and the singer, they want to do it in the key of E. Okay, well, in the key of E, you have a B, you have a C sharp minor. Little difficult for some players, and not a lot you can do, as far as, hammer-ons and little creative add-ins, when you're playing shapes. So let's get this song from the key of E. Well, it's going to stay in the key of E, but we want to play C shapes. So let's start on that C note and find where the E is. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4th fret. And we can now play the C shapes and play that chord progression, which is a 1, 5, 6, 4. Great. So I'm playing. The other guitar player's playing. All right? And the piano player and the bass player are all in the key of E, and so are you, but you're capoed up on the 4th fret. Let's try, we like the G chord family. Okay, so we start on the G note, because that's what we want to play. We want to play the G's. And let's find an E. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, because that's the 12th fret there. Okay, but we go up 9 notes. So we put the capo on the 9th fret. And we're getting up there now. See, so it could be a little difficult, but now we're going to play the G shapes. And the G shapes, the G chord we play for this progression. G, D, E minor, Okay, that can work. I mean, that's great articulation, nice little fills, while again the rest of the team are playing. Okay, so that's the formula to figure out where to put this thing. So hopefully that that helps you, because the other thing, you don't want to duplicate what the other guitar player is playing, because it just gets muddy. If everybody's playing, flogging those open chords at the top of the neck, lots of times bringing it up, and changing the key. It sounds better. Even if you're a solo artist, rather than playing a song, even if you're playing a C, back here, well, let's see if we can play G chord shape. So again, we start the G, we want to play the song in C, so where's the C? Okay, 5 notes up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's a C. So we want to play G chord shapes, but the song's in C. All right, and that G chord shape is a C. All right, so pretty simple. Get to use your capo, get familiar with it, and try changing keys of songs, or keeping the key where you want it, audio wise, sound wise, pitch wise, and just get chord shapes that you like. That's why you focus on the C chord shape family and the G chord shape family, and you'll have great luck. Okay, cool, thanks. Subscribe, comment, always like that. Bye.